There is sand in the beef. Not as an expression, not as a figure of speech. Silicon dioxide, the scientific name for sand, is a listed ingredient in Taco Bell's seasoned beef. That's number one on this list. And once you know it's there, you start wondering what else got in while you weren't looking. Here's what took me a long time to put together. This isn't one chain's mistake. 12 chains on this list made deliberate decisions, board-approved, calculated decisions about what goes in your food. And they counted on you never asking. Every meal you've eaten at these places, someone at a conference table already knew what was in it and decided that was fine. I've been growing my own food and reading labels on this Pennsylvania farm for over 45 years. And I'll tell you straight, what's happening in these kitchens is not an accident. It's a business model. By the end of this video, you'll know which 12 to avoid, the 4 that actually earned your money, and the private equity plot twist that explains why so many of these places feel different from how they used to. Start with Sonic Drive-In. Summer, a parking lot, a car hop on roller skates, a cherry limeade so cold the cup sweated in your hand. For a lot of people, Sonic wasn't just fast food, it was a ritual. Here's what that ritual is worth to the people who own it now. Inspire Brands, private equity backed, $13 billion in annual revenue, also owns Arby's and Buffalo Wild Wings. The playbook across all of them is identical. Acquire a brand people already trust, trim operating costs, and let the nostalgia carry the slack. County health inspectors pulled the number at a Sonic location. The shake mix was sitting at 49 degrees Fahrenheit. The safe cold holding limit is 41. That's the bacterial growth zone. That mix was on its way to your cup while someone at the window handed it out with a smile. A 2024 National Restaurant Meat Antibiotic Scorecard gave Sonic an F, not a D, an F, on its beef, pork and turkey supply. A medium cotton candy cream slush at Sonic runs 750 calories, 124 grams of carbohydrates, 0 protein, 0 fiber. If you're managing blood pressure or blood sugar, and statistically a lot of folks in this age group are, one Sonic combo can burn through your whole day's limits before you get back on the highway. The cherry limeade still tastes the way it always did. That's the entire strategy. Then there's Wendy's and that famous promise, fresh, never frozen. You've seen it on the signs, on the cups, in the commercials, your whole life. Here's the question nobody asks. What exactly does that promise cover? The beef patties in North America, that's it. The chicken isn't covered. Breakfast items aren't covered. The eggs aren't covered. The produce arriving pre-prepped and pre-packaged isn't covered. Fresh, never frozen applies to maybe a third of the menu, and Wendy's built an entire brand identity around it. A lawsuit filed in 2024 alleged that an 11-year-old suffered permanent neurological injuries after eating at a Wendy's franchise. The health inspection report for that location listed 17 active violations. 17. Moldy food, dirty utensils, produce with no date labels, sanitizer that didn't hit minimum standards, while fresh, never frozen was on the sign outside. Wendy's was also implicated in the 2022 E. coli romaine lettuce outbreak and pulled onions in 2024 during the Taylor Farms contamination that simultaneously hit McDonald's, Burger King, KFC, and Taco Bell. Fresh, never frozen has never once meant never contaminated. Now Burger King. Picture a factory floor, a long conveyor belt, beef patties moving through a processing line, not over a flame, but through a system applying artificial smoke flavor and pressing grill marks in. The grill marks are real. The flame that supposedly made them is the commercial. In 2024, an E. coli outbreak traced to Taylor Farms yellow onions sickened 75 people across 13 states, the same onions going on Burger King's burgers. Burger King pulled onions nationally, not because their kitchen caught the problem first, but because their supply chain was the same contaminated one as everyone else's. Burger King is owned by Restaurant Brands International, $8.4 billion in revenue in 2024. They returned $1 billion of that to shareholders the same year. That's what your beef sourcing budget competes against. A South Florida location was shut down in August 2025. Cold foods at unsafe temperatures, evidence of rodents in the building. Atlanta, inspection score of 68, missing food safety manager certification, garbage piled near the dumpster. These aren't rogue franchises. These are the predictable outcomes when a corporation's obligation runs upward to shareholders instead of downward to the kitchen. Arby's, and here's something food scientists know that most people don't, there's an enzyme called transglutaminase. The food industry calls it meat glue. It takes smaller pieces of meat, scraps, offcuts, the material that doesn't make the standard cut, and binds them together into a single uniform block. The reason this matters isn't the texture, it's the math. When you combine separate pieces of meat, you multiply the total surface area that can carry bacteria. E. coli, Salmonella, Listeria, all of them need surface area to grow. Meat glue gives them more of it. FDA approved, yes, still a meaningful risk when temperature control isn't perfect, and in a busy fast food kitchen, temperature control isn't always perfect. Arby's roast beef is processed this way. Arby's is part of Inspire Brands, same parent company as Sonic, backed by Rourke Capital, a private equity firm managing tens of billions in assets. A classic Arby's roast beef sandwich carries over 1,000 milligrams of sodium, just the sandwich, before curly fries, before sauce, before the drink. Former employees have described the roast beef arriving in bags, pre-formed blocks that get sliced to order. You're not watching it get carved, you're watching it get unpacked. Jack in the Box. In 1993, their hamburgers killed 4 children. The E. coli outbreak that followed became one of the most consequential food safety cases in American history. Federal meat inspection standards changed. The whole industry had to change. Jack in the Box survived. Here's what they decided to do with everything they learned. They built the Munchie Meal, available from 9 p.m. to 5 a.m., designed and marketed explicitly in their own advertising for customers who are intoxicated. This is not a side effect of their business model, this is the business model. Former employees have described late-night shifts as the worst environment for food safety. Fewer staff, more volume, holding times stretched, fryers running on old oil, grills that don't get cleaned the way the manual says. That is the kitchen the Munchie Meal customer walks into at 2 in the morning. In Las Vegas, inspectors found raw sewage backing up into a Jack in the Box kitchen and restrooms. Emergency shutdown ordered. The chain that survived the worst food safety disaster of its era had a choice about what to build next. They built the Munchie Meal. They learned the lesson, just the wrong one. Checkers and Rally's, 2 names, 1 company, divided roughly by geography. The food is identical, so are the health inspection records. Rodent droppings near the fry stations, roach activity in food storage areas, and repeat violations. Same locations, already warned, Inspectors came back, same problems. Because the economics never changed. Checkers and Rallies is backed by Oak Hill Capital Partners. Same private equity playbook you've seen across this list. A combo meal here can carry close to 2,000 milligrams of sodium. The recommended daily limit is 2,300. You've burned through the day before you pull out of the lot. For immunocompromised older adults, a kitchen with documented rodent activity isn't a calculated risk. It's a direct threat. Popeyes. Name a fast food chicken chain that feels more authentically southern. I'll wait. The red beans, the biscuits, the spice that tastes like someone's grandmother made it in a real Louisiana kitchen. Now let me tell you who actually owns it. Restaurant Brands International. Same corporation as Burger King on this list, headquartered in Toronto. The Louisiana Kitchen is a logo. A Memphis location was cited for improper hot holding temperatures and pest activity after a previous inspection had already flagged the same problems. Inspectors came back and the problems were still there. The chicken arrives pre-battered, frozen. The flavor work is MSG and sodium phosphates layered into the breading to compensate for what industrial chicken lacks on its own. That spice you love? Some of it is chemistry. A 3-piece tender meal carries close to 1,400 milligrams of sodium, nearly a full day's limit, in one box. Pause here because there's a number worth sitting with. Burger King and Popeyes, both owned by Restaurant Brands International. Sonic and Arby's, both owned by Inspire Brands, backed by Rourke Capital. KFC and Taco Bell coming up, both owned by Yum Brands. 6 chains out of 12 controlled by 3 corporations whose primary legal obligation is delivering financial returns. Not making good food, not keeping kitchens clean, growing the number. When you choose between these drive-thrus, you're not choosing between competitors. You're choosing between subsidiaries of the same investment philosophy. Dairy Queen. You remember the Blizzard flip? The cup held upside down over the counter, proof it was thick enough to stay in. Here's what Warren Buffett's company puts in it. Dairy Queen's soft serve does not meet the federal minimum standard to be called ice cream. Legally classified as a frozen dairy dessert. Less real milk fat, more industrial stabilizers, cellulose gum derived from wood pulp, mono and diglycerides, artificial vanilla. The Blizzard machine is one of the most consistently flagged pieces of equipment in fast food health inspections. Bacterial buildup risk in the exact product handed to your grandchildren. A large peanut butter cookie dough Blizzard carries more sugar than most doctors would recommend for an entire day, in one cup, flipped upside down. His name is on this chain, his standards are in this product. KFC. Colonel Sanders was obsessive about his chicken. When he finally sold, he reportedly called the gravy wallpaper paste and said he'd been had. That was 1964. Things have gotten worse. KFC is owned by Yum Brands, same corporation that owns Taco Bell. Suppliers have been caught in documented international scandals using expired meat. Footage surfaced of product past its label date being reprocessed and sent back into the supply chain. KFC issued statements. The supply chain didn't fundamentally change. KFC chicken ranks near the top of industry testing for advanced glycation end products, compounds that form when protein and fat react under high heat in oil that's run too long at too high a temperature. They accelerate aging, drive chronic inflammation, increase risk of diabetes and cardiovascular disease. Invisible on the menu board. Worker accounts describe managers directing staff to cook chicken past labelled expiration dates when inventory runs low. The Colonel obsessed over the precise moment chicken should come out of the fryer. Yum Brands obsesses over its margin. Those are not the same obsession. Subway. You chose it because it was the healthy option. That's the entire play. Subway's bread contains azodicarbonamide, a dough conditioner also used in manufacturing yoga mats and shoe soles, banned as a food additive in Europe and Australia. Subway needed a PR campaign to stop using something other countries banned decades ago. Lab tests found no amplifiable tuna DNA in Subway's tuna samples. The New York Times paid for that testing. A lawsuit followed, alleging the product contained chicken, pork, and cattle DNA. Dismissed. The question of whether Subway's tuna contains tuna was never definitively answered in a courtroom. That is not exoneration. Lab analysis of their chicken found approximately 50% chicken DNA. The rest, soy, preservatives, fillers. In 2023, Roark Capital acquired Subway, the same Roark that owns Arby's and Sonic. The Healthy Choice chain now belongs to the same private equity portfolio as the Meat Glue chain and the Sugar Slush chain. Subway's processed cold cuts are classified by the World Health Organization as Group 1 carcinogens when consumed regularly. Group 1, same category as tobacco and asbestos, not associated with cancer, cause cancer. McDonald's ammonium hydroxide beef treatment works like this. Take lower-grade beef scraps, trimmings, the parts that don't make the cut for standard ground beef, treat them with ammonia gas to kill the bacteria that accumulates in that kind of material, incorporate that into the ground beef blend. Not a contamination event, not an accident. Tuesday. McDonald's quietly phased it out when it became public, not because it became illegal, but because once people knew, they didn't want to eat it. In 2024, 75 people were sickened across 13 states in an E. coli outbreak linked to Quarter Pounders, traced to slivered onions from Taylor Farms, the same supplier simultaneously sending product to Burger King, Taco Bell, and KFC. The fries have 19 ingredients. The shakes have more than 50. The nuggets contain dimethyl polysiloxane, an anti-foaming agent also used in silly putty. That's not an exaggeration. That's the ingredient list. McDonald's isn't making you sick in a single visit. It's a slow process. Cardiovascular disease, type 2 diabetes, hypertension, chronic conditions that are expensive to treat, and the companies profiting from decades of this food are not the ones handing you the bill when the damage finally shows up. And number 1, Taco Bell. Silicon dioxide, listed ingredient, in the seasoned beef. Taco Bell's seasoned beef is approximately 88% beef. The remaining 12% includes oats, maltodextrin, modified cornstarch, soy lecithin, and silicon dioxide. A lawsuit alleged the meat content was too low to legally be called beef under USDA definitions. Taco Bell fought it, called the claims false, won the dismissal, and quietly reformulated the recipe shortly after. You don't reformulate a recipe you're proud of. The cheese sauce. Water is the first ingredient, vegetable oil second, modified starch third, cheddar cheese fourth. Multiple locations were closed in 2023 following norovirus outbreaks traced to employee hygiene failures. Not a contaminated supplier 1,000 miles away, the food handling inside the restaurants themselves. And Taco Bell is owned by Yum Brands, same corporation as KFC. Two of the worst chains on this list under one roof. One sourcing philosophy, one labor standard, 2 drive-thrus giving you the same bad deal with different logos. Now, the 4 that actually earned a spot. Sweetgreen. The ingredient list reads like a recipe, not a regulatory filing. Seasonal ingredients, suppliers listed in the store, no artificial colours, no artificial flavours, no preservatives. In January 2025, they removed seed oils entirely from their menu, switching to extra virgin olive oil and avocado oil. Not announced as a future goal, done. They're the only major chain at this scale that can say that. Not cheap, not in every city, but the bowl structure itself, greens, whole grain, simple protein, olive oil, acid, is a template for what a meal that actually fuels you looks like. You can build it at home for a fraction of the price. Chipotle. In 2015, they caused one of the most public food safety disasters in fast casual history. E. coli across multiple states, norovirus outbreaks, salmonella. They closed hundreds of locations, appeared before Congress, and watched their stock crater. And then they did something almost no chain on the worst list has ever done. They actually fixed it. High-resolution food safety cameras, DNA testing of ingredients before they enter the kitchen, third-party verified supplier audits. No added colours, flavours or preservatives anywhere on the menu. Antibiotic-free meat from farms with documented animal welfare standards. A guacamole recipe with 6 ingredients. Every chain on the worst list, when caught, issued a statement and continued operating as before. Chipotle is the one that proves the response to a disaster doesn't have to be a press release. Chick-fil-A. The waffle fries have 3 ingredients: potatoes, oil, salt. The lemonade is freshly squeezed daily from real lemons, cane sugar, and water. The chicken is hand-breaded in the restaurant, not pre-frozen before cooking. The nuggets contain no added MSG or artificial preservatives. For years, they maintained a full no antibiotics ever commitment across their entire chicken supply, one of the most credible positions any major chain had taken on this issue. In 2024, they walked it back under industry pressure, and that's a real step backward that belongs in the conversation. But operationally, in terms of food handling and kitchen consistency across thousands of locations, they run one of the tightest operations in the industry. Chick-fil-A has led the entire fast food industry in customer satisfaction scores by a meaningful margin for over a decade. At that scale, you cannot fake quality for that long. Eventually, it shows up in the numbers. And the one that never left what fast food was supposed to be, In-N-Out Burger. No freezers, no microwaves, no heat lamps. The beef is 100% USDA ground chuck, delivered fresh daily from their own facilities, 0 additives, 0 fillers, 0 preservatives. Buns baked without preservatives. Fries hand-cut from whole potatoes on site, cooked in pure sunflower oil. Milkshakes made from real ice cream and sugar, nothing else. The menu has barely changed since 1948 because they figured out what worked and stopped. Every chain on the worst list answers to Restaurant Brands International, Yum Brands, Rourke Capital, Oak Hill, Berkshire Hathaway, or Inspire Brands. Corporations that don't wake up thinking about your food, they wake up thinking about their number. In-N-Out is privately owned, has always been privately owned, and answers to a quality standard set by the family that built it. Not a board, not a private equity firm, not a shareholder who bought in last quarter. That gap between the chains that answer to quality and the ones that answer to profit is the only thing you need to understand about fast food in America. The safest meal is still the one you make yourself, with ingredients you chose from a source you trust. But when life is busy and options feel limited, now you know exactly where to spend your money and exactly where to stop.